Here's a psychology fact you're not ready for. The smartest people you know are constantly being mistaken for fools, not because they lack intelligence, because their minds move somewhere the average brain can't follow. Nietzsche saw this over a century ago. He watched brilliant minds get dismissed, mocked, laughed out of rooms by people who never came close to their level of thinking. And he understood something most people still refuse to accept today. Genius doesn't get recognized in real time. It gets misread as madness, arrogance, or stupidity. Psychologists call this the understanding gap. And once you understand it, you'll see why the smartest people you know often feel like outsiders. Why brilliant ideas get mocked before they get praised. And why being ahead of everyone else can feel less like a gift and more like a curse. Your intelligence, your originality, even your confidence in your own ideas. All of it is shaped by this one brutal psychological pattern. The mind that sees furthest is almost always the mind that gets understood last. Think about that one coworker who suggests a completely different way of doing a project. And instead of getting curiosity, they get eye rolls. Or that friend who tries to explain a complicated idea at dinner, and the table just goes quiet and changes the subject. That's not stupidity on their part. That's the understanding gap in action. Live right in front of you. But here's where it gets even worse. It's not just that people fail to understand geniuses. People actively resist understanding them, because understanding someone smarter than you forces you to confront your own limitations. And the brain hates that more than almost anything else. Psychology says people don't call genius stupid because they're joking. They call it stupid because it's the only way their brain can process something it wasn't built to process. Nietzsche called this the tragedy of the free mind. He said the great thinker is always misunderstood, not despite his brilliance, but because of it. A mind operating on a different level speaks a language the crowd hasn't learned yet. So the crowd doesn't hear genius. It hears nonsense. And nonsense gets laughed at. Here's the painful part. Your brain is wired to reject what it can't immediately categorize. Anything unfamiliar gets flagged as a threat, a mistake, or a joke, long before it gets flagged as advanced. This is why history is full of geniuses who were ridiculed, ignored, or punished while they were alive, only to be praised as visionaries decades after they died. Galileo, Van Gogh, Nietzsche himself, who died before the world caught up to a single one of his ideas, even outside of history books. This plays out in ordinary life. The student who asks a question so far ahead of the lesson that the teacher brushes it off instead of answering it. The employee who spots a problem 3 steps before anyone else even notices there's smoke and gets told to stop overthinking. The kid who gets called weird in school for reading about physics instead of playing along, only to become the person everyone quietly asks for advice 20 years later. Same pattern, different room. But here's the part nobody wants to admit. If you've ever felt like people don't get you, like your ideas move faster than the room can follow, like you explain something simple in your head, but it comes out sounding strange to everyone else, that's not a flaw in you. That might be evidence of exactly what we're talking about right now. And this next part explains why your life hasn't changed yet. Even though you know you're capable of more, this happens because of something called cognitive distance. The bigger the gap between two minds, the more the smarter mind looks broken to the less developed one. Think about trying to explain calculus to someone who never learned basic math. They won't think you're smart. They'll think you're confusing, maybe even wrong. Not because you are, because their mind has no framework to hold what you're saying. It's the same reason a chess grandmaster's move can look insane to a beginner, right up until it wins the game 10 moves later. Or why a founder's strange business idea gets rejected by every investor in the room, until it becomes the product everyone eventually copies. In the moment, it never looks like genius. It just looks off. Your brain does this to protect you from complexity it isn't ready to process. It's a survival mechanism, not a moral judgment. Simplicity feels safe. Depth feels threatening. So when someone thinks in layers, in patterns, and connections other people haven't made yet, the untrained mind doesn't experience awe. It experiences discomfort, and discomfort, more often than not, gets disguised as mockery. Nietzsche understood this discomfort better than almost anyone in history. He wrote that the individual has always had to struggle to avoid being overwhelmed by the tribe. If he isolates himself, he's called selfish. If he stays, he risks being erased by the crowd's need for sameness. Genius, in his eyes, was rarely rewarded in the moment it appeared. It was tolerated at best, punished at worst, and only celebrated once it was safely in the past. Once it could no longer challenge anyone living. Your mind thinks this pain means something is wrong with you. But the reality is, the pain of being misunderstood is often the exact signature of original thought. If everyone around you agrees with everything you say, you're probably not saying anything new. If that hits you, good. It means you needed it. Because most people spend their entire lives shrinking their thinking, down just to be understood by rooms that were never built to hold their depth. They dumb themselves down for approval. They mute their ideas for comfort. And slowly, without realizing it, they trade their potential for belonging. It's the group project where the one person with the actual solution stays quiet because the last 3 times they spoke up, someone made a joke about it. Here's the truth you've been avoiding. You were never meant to be understood by everyone. You were meant to be understood by the people who are willing to grow into your level of thinking. Waiting for the whole room to catch up to you is not humility. It's self-sabotage. If you want to break this cycle, start with this. Stop translating your best ideas down to the lowest level in the room, just to avoid feeling awkward. Say the real thought, let it sit in silence if it has to. Let people call it strange, complicated, even stupid, because somewhere in that same room might be one person whose mind is finally ready to meet yours. That's the only audience that ever mattered. Here's the mental trick that actually works. Every time you feel misunderstood, ask yourself one question. Am I being unclear, or am I simply ahead? If the answer is ahead, don't shrink. Refine how you explain it, but never abandon the depth of what you're trying to say. Nietzsche didn't get validated in his lifetime. He kept writing anyway, because he understood something most people never will. Being early is lonely. But being early is also the price every original mind eventually has to pay. So the next time someone looks at you like you're speaking a different language, remember this: you probably are. And one day, the world will finally learn to translate it.